2020 was... Actually, hold on. Okay, tell me how I look. The uneven eyeliner was intentional, okay? It's part of the look. Okay, well, anyways, where was I? 2020 was definitely...
Post-cringe by guns. Are you done yet? The mother for your phone, so you think you got a glitch. Hey, dial with the fresh type of flow.
Hyperpop, Monster Energy guns, anime, and highly saturated filters. At least that's if you were on TikTok. Over the years, I've seen a lot of people describe this era of their lives as extremely cringy, and I've seen plenty of people hate on the 2020 aesthetic and call it one of the worst styles. But recently, in this upcoming new year, I've been scrolling TikTok as I do, and I've seen a lot of people that have been trying to bring back the 2020 era. And not just 2020, but the 2020 era of alt fashion, which a lot of people hate. So my question today is, why in the big year 2025, 5 entire years after this era has came and went, do people want to revive this aesthetic? Before TikTok is banned in 14 days as I'm filming this, I'm gonna be trying to touch on everything that led to the 2020 revival in the year 2025. That includes how rapidly aesthetics and trends cycled through TikTok, as well as what the 2020 era of alt fashion did for the alt community in general, counterculture, and the anti-cringe culture movement. As well as some personal insight, because if you couldn't tell, in my version of 2020, I recall being stuck at home all day, feeling isolated, laying in bed, sleeping through all of my online classes, and just feeling really lonely and depressed. The only way of socializing being through social media, and I've always been a chronically online person. I was only 14 when I spent countless hours on TikTok laying in bed all day until I came across alt TikTok. Alt TikTok seemed like such a fun community because everyone seemed free and all were welcome, and I wanted to join. I too wanted to paint my lips black, cosplay Danganronpa characters, and wear demonias, and the freedom of self-expression knew no limit during this time. Joining the alt community on TikTok was like a coping mechanism for feeling alone and isolated in my room all day. But as the years went on, the trends changed, and being alt in that way was not really trendy anymore. Now, a lot of people who are in other alternative subcultures love to hate on this group of people. And the 2020 alts were called posers. Some of them were posers, but we are going to touch on that later. While so many people like to call this era cringy, I feel like it was a gateway for a lot of us to be introduced to other alternative subcultures. And I'm thankful that I discovered My Chemical Romance at 14 because now, 5 years later, I get to see them live. And I get to see Pierce the Veil for the second time. I don't mean to flex, but my point is that I feel like it just introduced a lot of people into actual alternative subcultures. But I really feel like 2020 alt TikTok was mostly full of just teenagers who were exploring their self-expression and looking for somewhere to belong. And I'm grateful for my 2020 alt phase. Some of that music is still kind of fire, like Mother Mother is pretty good. And listen, I like to think of the 2020 alternative era as like a gateway into other subcultures in the same way that like the 2015/2016 emo era was also a gateway for many tweens and teens to be introduced into like emo or like alternative music and cultures. Listen, in 2016, I was listening to 21 Pilots, Panic at the Disco, and Melanie Martinez in the same way that the 2020 alt kids would listen to Mother Mother, Mindless Self-Indulgence, Jasmine Bean, and 100 Gex. And while you might not like the music, it does have its own music, which is kind of a requirement to be a subculture. And I just think that these communities really attracted young people because they felt like they can express themselves. And similarly to the 2020 era, when people think about their emo phase, they also cringe. And listen, I was also cringy in 2020, I'm not gonna deny it. But you have to give your teenage self grace. Once the 2020 aesthetic went out of style around 2023 and clean girl was popping at that time, I saw so much like hatred for alternative people. And I don't know if you guys have seen the trend, but I saw a lot of "I'm so glad I'm out of my alt phase" TikToks that people would make, and it just came off really hateful towards alt people. It sounded like they were saying like, "Oh, I was so cringe, I was so ugly during my emo phase, but now I'm normal and I'm a clean girl, and I was so ugly, but now look at me, I'm so beautiful." And I feel like this trend really did show that 2020 was really a phase for some of these people. But I think that's okay, because we were all just teenagers learning how to express ourselves. The only thing I have a problem with was making it seem like being alt is a bad thing. Just being hateful in general towards alt people, like, you don't have to do that. Like, it could be a phase for you, but for some of us, it's not a phase. And now I want to talk about the politics and cultural moments that I think influenced the resurgence of this style.
I'm just like, dude, like, oh my God, like, can we talk about like the political and economic state of the world right now?
But before you guys yell at me for my political opinions, can I just say I'm just an 18-year-old girl and I don't know everything. So don't get mad at me, okay? Okay, call it a reach, but I really do think that politics and the current culture, at least in the US, really does impact the aesthetics and styles that are popular. Personally, I don't think it's a coincidence that after the Luigi Mangione incident, that many Americans have began to gain class consciousness for once. A lot of people are realizing that CEOs and the ultra rich are not our friends. And in my opinion, it's kind of influenced a counterculture. And I believe that means it's a direct response to the popularity of the clean girl aesthetic of the year 2023/2024. Clean girl was so popular, and I just feel like people rebelling in a way reflects the political and economical state of the world. Because in my opinion, I mean, the 2020 alt aesthetic is kind of the direct opposite of the clean girl aesthetic. I mean, look at me. I think that people just are tired of emulating the rich influencers that you see promoting all these clean girl products to you on TikTok Shop. Not even just on TikTok, but like actual celebrities like Kim K, like A-list celebrities are very into the clean girl aesthetic as well. Or it's not that deep and teenagers just want to express themselves, which is also true, because while scrolling on TikTok, I've seen so many comments from kids that say that they were like 8 or 9 in 2020, which makes me feel so old because I was 14. So I think that's also part of the resurgence, because now that they're old enough to dress like that, they're gonna do it. And it slightly makes me want to gatekeep, because my culture is not your costume. But in all honesty, I'm glad that kids are getting to express themselves now. And that's the most important thing that I want to touch on. I think that the revival of 2020 is pretty great, actually. With the way trends have been coming and going so quickly, and consumerism being at an all-time high, I feel that despite obviously being its own trend currently, the revival of 2020 and the anti-cringe culture sentiment that I feel like it promotes is actually really good, because I feel like it encourages people to be themselves and wear what they want to wear. And I feel like this comment said it perfectly, pretty much. I honestly think that 2020 alt has its potential to become its own subculture. I mean, there is music associated with it, and I think the aesthetic can be done without sheen or using fast fashion, especially because this trend was not from that long ago, so you can find a lot of these pieces on Depop or thrifting. And even if you don't align with the aesthetic, I hope that the revival of 2020 and the rise of the sentiment of anti-cringe culture can help young people feel more comfortable expressing themselves through fashion and music. And who cares if someone thinks you're cringe? Be yourself, as cheesy as that sounds. But honestly, live your life, try different styles, listen to weird music, experiment, like no one's stopping you. And even though I'm trying to cut down on caffeine in 2025, I'm still gonna drink this Monster. And just to practice what I preach, I'm going to go out in this outfit. Rar XD. Thank you guys so much for listening to me yap. It really means a lot to me if you got to the end of this video. And I really want to hear your guys' opinions on 2020 alt fashion and all of it. I'd love to have a discussion with you in the comments. I love replying to people. And if you liked hearing me yap and you want to hear more of me, please consider subscribing. It'll really mean so much to me. I'm only at 50 subscribers right now, but my goal is to reach 1,000 by the end of this year, and it's only January, so I think I have plenty of time. But I plan on uploading a lot more, so please don't miss out. Again, thank you all so much for watching this long. Bye!